So yesterday we touched on the aspect, still on the aspect of discerning. That is to say, we have to able to discern our actions, whether our actions are necessary or not necessary for us to do during in the Vipassana retreat. A lot of things they are not necessary compared to our everyday life out there. Here, a number of things we should carry on, keep on doing it, like the walking, sitting, without any much interruption from our from our desire or our wanting and laziness and boredom and so on. So we have to be disciplined, mentally and physically disciplined, that we have to keep the walking or keep the sitting going on without all the other temptations that's going to draw you out from that walking or sitting. So too, the next thing is about the also on the wholesome side. That too, we have to check whether the actions are necessary for us to do or not while we are in a retreat. While we are out there, those actions can be helpful, can be necessary, can be very fulfilling acts of faith, which is those are good when you're out there or when you're not in a retreat. But when we are in a retreat, those things, those actions, like services, chanting or too much chanting and so on, all these things we have to keep it to the very minimum, so that those actions does not tire the body, and we can able to do this meditation continuously throughout the day. Actions is not only physical actions but also on our speech. Sometimes we have to check whether some of our speech, is it necessary for us to talk? If it's not necessary, then you have to keep the noble silence. Then the other aspect of discernment is to discern whether our meditation objects, which are the meditation objects that are suitable, which are not suitable for development of this meditation. Basically, what is not suitable, we categorize them as created by the mind. What is suitable, what is right for this Vipassana meditation falls under what you can be directly known. Objects can be directly known. To describe this, what is directly known, it falls under the objects of the four foundation of mindfulness. The objects of body, feelings, you have consciousness, and you have the Dhamma objects. We're not going to elaborate on this thing, but we're going to talk about it here and there as we go on this topic. Concepts or mentally created objects, they can look so real because we are using it all the time. And throughout our whole lives. And if we have past life, we also have been using all these things since our past life. In future, yes. So, all these concepts, although they are created by the mind, but some of them can be very helpful, Some of them, or a lot of them actually, not really necessary. Now, while we are in this retreat, y'all have gone through the walking, sitting, daily activities. You know that a lot of times we fall into the story, we fall into the contents, we fall into the history, memory, and so on. All this, when we fall into it, when the mind created all these things out, then here we are out of Vipassana meditation. Although you are still sitting or you are still walking, but you are not meditating. You're not in Vipassana. But the moment that you pull it back, the moment you pull it back to the present object, then the Vipassana progress. Then the mindfulness starts to come back, to arise again. So you have to keep that thoughts to a minimum. Some of us have a lot of thinking. No. I cannot use that. All of us have a lot of thinking. And that is the right way to put it. Until we learn how to control, how to learn to manage those thoughts. It's not about making the thoughts to become zero thoughts. It's about learning to able, whenever they arises, you be mindful of them, you can catch hold of them immediately. If you can do that, then what will happen is that the thoughts will cut off quite fast. If you don't catch it, if you fall into it again and again, then all these thoughts can become as if like they are real. So much so that I've met with yogis. They thought that they got supernatural powers. They thought that they are sitting. They are sitting, and then all the imagination and the thoughts fly and wander into their house. Then while the thoughts are wandering there, they kind of take note of the time. What time is right now exactly? So what happened is that they record the time now, and whatever the mind is having all this image, they believe that they could see what is happening at home. Like a CCTV. But this one is a mental part without using the phone. So they thought that they have that superpower, that they believe that their children or their wife or whatever, they are doing something there, and they could see it very clearly, and they believe that those images are all real. They can make it so clear that they thought that those thoughts and those things are so clear. So after that, after the retreat, they go back and they go and check, did you do this at that certain time? just to make sure that it is all connected. But then when they go back there, all this thing is not important anymore. All the time they are all just imagining and just conceptualizing, but they believe and they hold on, and they get attached to their own thoughts and own creation. So all these thoughts and this creation over time, if you are not careful, it's very easy for you to create those things and you believe them. And we have been doing these things again and again all our lives. Whatever the mind thinks, and and the mind get enticed with that concept, with that idea, with that thoughts. Very quickly the mind just grabs on it and we believe that those are real. We're going to, when this Vipassana is going to go deeper, things that sometimes we brought up to for us to believe and think those things are real, actually they are all mental creation. One of the factor is the I. Who is listening right now? You think mind and body listening? Yes, theoretically. But while you're doing it, is I am listening. That I also is also concept. It's a creation of the mind that we think that is there something there, there's some entity, you call it soul, you call it Atma, you call it whatever you want to call it. That thing is made up by the mind, and you believe it. Because there's nothing else to believe. There's something there. We hold on to it. So this is kind of external that we hold on to. Internal. Internal, something that we hold on to, like this type of concept of soul, idea of an I. Externally, then we also have that concept of a creator. You give it whatever name you want to give it. Yeah. And again here, finally, when you go deeper into the aspect of this mind and body, even your mindfulness and your concentration becomes into a deeper level, stronger. That time you realize that there's no creator, there's no supernatural being. It's all made up by the mind. And over the years, this belief, over time, we kind of like seal it, cement it into our hearts and mind. We don't realize that those are just mental creation. Until you see it for yourself. Until you see it for yourself within this mind and body process. If you see the other part, then only you see that how wrong we will get caught into this idea. Until you see those things. And all these things starts with Vipassana. So this is one area of concept that we have to be careful. Because this type of concept, this type of mental creation, a lot of times when we come to this retreat and so on, every now and then we notice yogis get caught up into all kinds of mental images. If they are not taught, if they are not guided, sometimes the yogi, whatever retreat they have gone to, then they come in, they sit down, they create the light in front of them. And then they get attached to it. 佛光. You know what 佛光? Buddha's light. Oh, you get all the light and then you get stay into it. You thought that these are special Buddha's light. It's all creation of the mind. You interpret it, you believe it, you comment on it, you judge on it. But it's just mental creation. And this type of creation, because you believe that those things are real, every retreat you go, if nobody were to guide you, you're going to repeat this thing again and again and again and again. And that Once in a while, I've met with yogis get stuck in this type of thing for 20 over years. 20 over years. Then only they realize how far they have get. They divert out. They thought that they are progressing because it's beautiful. The light is beautiful. It's calming. You don't feel the bodily pain. You feel like you are in a cocoon of light. You feel purified. This is all your mental creation. So you got to be careful. Because there are places where I know that you are taught to create all these type of lights. And if you are not careful, you get caught into it and so on. Not that the lights are wrong. All this mental, sometimes you see all this brightness of the mind, lights, color, they are not wrong. They are part of the mind, in fact. The thing that is wrong is that you are crave for it, you attach to it, you believe it. Now that is the culprit. That is the hidden defilement. Every one of us, there'll be a lot of ideas arises, concept arises, or lights arises, or even sometimes you see the Buddha, or you see the Dhamma, or whatever is being created during in the sitting. All these things, as long as you don't attach to them, then you're okay. Some people, due to their faith, strong faith that they have, when they meditate and they sit down, because of their strong faith, natural tendency of the thinking is to create the Buddha, the Sangha, the monks and so on, because they are inclined into this area, into this people and objects of faith. So, in the sitting also this type of images comes up. Now, as long as these images you don't attach to them, you don't interpret them, you don't fall into their story, then well and good. You just note them as thinking, or if you happen to see Buddha, and then let it pass. You're not to hold on to this type of thoughts or this type of mental creation. I've seen the Dhamma books also that they wrote there, the monk sees the Buddha. Not only just the Buddha, they see Sariputta and Moggallana come to him. And they've written there in the book, all the arahants are coming to him, to tell him or to sort of interpret that he's also one of the arahants already. When I read this, immediately my mind says, "Yeah, joining the club." Join the Arahant club. Just how far the idea has gone, has swayed away. And yet many devotees who are ignorant look at and when they read, wow, how wonderful, how interesting, how marvelous with these type of thoughts. Then what do the devotees do? They follow. They follow exactly. Then you from one delusion is being inherited to the next generation. And that is where we all go blind. We're already blind, but it gets blinded further. This is happening in the world of Buddhism, because we don't really understand the true nature of the mind. So this is one area of the mind. So whatever thoughts and creation arises, just note them as seeing, 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 or thinking, 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 or restless, 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 or planning, planning, planning. So it's perfectly all right if those things arises. No matter whether the thoughts is beautiful or ugly, horrible, and so on. Your job is to get out of it, note them as it is, let them pass. Let them pass while they are still there. What you should do is that you take notice of how one thought is passing from one thought after you go from one thought to another. Sometimes while you are noticing this type of state of mind, sometimes the thoughts can be very uh, chaotic inside there. Chaotic in the sense that the mind is restless. That it's going round and round, is very random. And then after that, the mind starts to cool down a little bit. Then you can see one after another, one after another, one after another. And sometimes you begin to see how these thoughts starts to fade. Slowly and slowly the thought starts to fade, and then it disappears, and then the whole mind is alert and clear and not attached. In other words, you transform those thoughts into a Vipassana object instead of getting drowned into it, getting attached onto those thoughts. It's more like here it's more like a Chittanupassana, being mindful of the mind or the mental states here. Also, so this is on the mind part, but the next thing on this concept is that concept not just only in the mind, but it also arises from the other five senses. Of course, finally the five senses connect it back to the mind too, the sixth sense. So the five senses also, it's also important for us to take note and not to attach. What we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, and what we touch. Now here, when it comes into these five senses, especially when we are walking, not really inside here, but let's say you are walking out there, and you're walking from one place to another. Here you have to be aware of your seeing process or your hearing also. Let's say if you walk right step, left step, right step, left step, and then suddenly you see something that caught your eye. If it catch your eye, for example, maybe let's say a flower is there. So your job is to, when you see the flower, you note it as just flower, flower, or seeing, seeing, seeing. Then what you should do? Go smell the flower. At least you know you're not supposed to do that. You just watch it, seeing, 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 and then let it go. Carry on your walking to wherever what you need. Don't stop there and admire. Don't do that. Or somehow, if you are walking out there and then you hear the birds chirping, then you hearing. Don't get caught into what is it, what bird is that, and then you start looking. Where are you? Are you hiding here and there? You try to locate the sound. Then that is not for you to do. Because if you start, if the hearing comes in, if you start to interpret and you start to think, then it goes into thinking. It goes into wondering. So whatever that all the senses while we are in the retreat here, most of the time you just note it as seeing, 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 hearing, 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 and you label them. But of course, you have to be careful once in a while, If you happen to see right step, left step, and then you see kind of like a rope in front of you, seeing, 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 but the rope start to move. Hey, it's not a rope, it's a snake. Then you have, then you also not seeing, 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 and then you don't bother. You just walk on top of it. That is not right. You better that time you better bring in your thinking mind to avoid it. Now, since we are talking about snake here, over here is in a way is a forested area. There are yogis also have seen some snakes here and there. I've been here for a number of times. Then once in a while, I've seen some venomous snakes around, especially in the forested area. Yeah? So you got to be careful when you are here. Just don't not seeing, seeing, and seeing, and you know. At that time, you have to exercise a little bit of caution. So here, that you have like, and then this season, especially this season, there's a lot of caterpillar around, and these caterpillar, don't go and touch them. Yeah. If you want to do your walking meditation, make sure that your path is free from all these caterpillar. They are very itchy. Yeah. It burns sometimes, this caterpillar. So be careful. Anyway, so here you're seeing, you're hearing, you got to take note of those things. If you're not seeing, hearing, in the beginning process, in the beginning part of our retreat or beginning of our development, you don't notice what is really going on in the seeing part of it. Because the seeing part of it is where the consciousness of seeing is happening. If there's a consciousness, the eyes is taking in the object. Not just because you have just the eye, it needs that consciousness. It needs that mind to be there in order for the object to get connected in that way. Yeah. In our Abhidhamma, it mentioned that for this contact to take place, then it needs to have the consciousness, it needs to have the medium, it needs to have that object. And here, let's say if it's a seeing, the medium here is the eye. The eye, the consciousness, the object, and of course together with the lights. Yeah? So the three things, when it comes together, then it forms a seeing process, we call it. A seeing process. Now, the seeing process here, most of the time, when we are out there, the way that how we interpret from our seeing and hearing, or tasting, or touching, or smelling, is that we don't see the consciousness of it. We already you take that object, it already goes into the mind, interprets the mind think about it, the mind judge, and so on. If you see a dress, the moment that you see the dress, there's a feeling of you like it or you don't like it. There's a feeling there, or it's neutral to you. But if you like it, the moment that you like it, the craving, the attachment starts coming in. immediately. But out there, we don't see even the craving, because the joy that comes to it, seeing the beautiful things, it's already more prominent than the craving or the attachment. So usually in our life we don't do that. We don't. In our life we do like this. But while we are in the Vipassana, this is where we shift our attention. We shift our attention not to the object, but shift it back to the consciousness. Because the consciousness is real. If you happen to see something, that means at that present moment, the consciousness has a reason. But this consciousness, they are subtle consciousness. Not easy. They are subtle. So that's why in the beginning part of our walking or sitting, and in the beginning part of our meditation, we don't take these senses as our object. We don't take it too much. Once in a while, okay. But you don't take it continuously. One of the biggest reasons is that these consciousness are subtle objects. But when your mindfulness, as you grow in this mindfulness, as the clarity of the mind gets better, then there'll come to a time you actually can notice the consciousness. Because the mindfulness, when it gets stronger, it magnifies that consciousness for you to see. Not that consciousness is getting bigger, no. It's just because of the mindfulness, it makes things clearer. In other words, you begin to notice the consciousness that's happening, seeing the consciousness is arising, passing away at that moment of time. So in other words, you begin to notice this thing. Yeah? So to the hearing process, also the same thing. You hear, don't interpret them. While we are here in the beginning, you just notice it as hearing, hearing, hearing. Then you come back to your body again. You notice seeing, 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 you come back to the body. It may be walking, it may be sitting, as long as you don't fall into those things, falls into those objects. Even while you're eating, it's the same thing, While we are chewing, then when you notice the tasting is something real. You notice it as warm, it's this salty, you notice as sweet, and so on. Yeah? As long as you notice it in that way, then we stay in the Vipassana objects. But if you start to think about, maybe they should put more vinegar inside there, it will taste better. And then you go into concept. You go into concept and desire also. Maybe sometimes you go to these places, you kind of like, you feel the food is tasty, is good. Then you start to think, salty. How much did she put? How's it being cooked? You start to think about it. Now, when you start to think about it, this is where you go into concept. If you want to be a chef, that is a good way for you to go. You can taste it very clearly. You know exactly how much they put the ingredient and everything. It's all in the mind already. Yeah? But to be a Vipassana yogi, we don't go into the thoughts. We stay in the taste only. Yeah? You know that it's tasty. You know it's tasty because as you notice it in the Vipassana, the taste will come and it will disappear, or it will change. Your job is to notice where the taste is changing. It changes from one taste to another taste and all that, and sometimes it becomes neutral or disappear. So this is how you pay attention to objects that's related to your senses. Don't fall into the thoughts. Yeah. Whereas the earlier one, the earlier part is that when, for example, when you're sitting, it's not connected to all the other thoughts. It's created by the mind itself. So all of them, whether it's just created by the mind by itself or connected to all the senses, all of them falls under concept. So they are not suitable objects for vipassana. So if you're able to discern it through that these are not the objects for you to fall into it, then you take up the actual vipassana objects. One of the things about this concept, about our ideas and our thoughts, is that a lot of times for us is that we don't see that this concept actually is a burden, is a flaw of the mind. Yeah. We don't see those things. In fact, for most of the time, we cherish our ideas, we cherish our thoughts and our intellectual conceptualization. We can create, we can plan, we can design. We kind of like having the pride of being proud that we can able to do that. Because you cherish it, this is where you want to dwell into it. In Vipassana, if you don't see those things as a burden, if you don't see it as a flaw of the mind, or is a defilement of the mind, if you don't see those things, your mind is not going to shift it to the Vipassana object. Because this is the thoughts and thinking and planning and creation, those are very pleasant, enticing, and this is what we do in life. Yeah? In the Vipassana, if you learn to shift the mind into the Vipassana objects, and you learn to stay with the Vipassana objects, it's not that your intellectual capacity will start to diminish. It's not that at all. If its intellectual capacity starts to diminish, that means there's something wrong with the meditation. Yeah. It doesn't mean that when you meditate, you're going to lose your memory of your past and so on. No. In fact, your concept, your memory and so on will be even clearer than before. Because mindfulness, it enhances not only your vipassana objects, but it also enhances and make everything clear. Other words, your memory, your planning, your thoughts and everything also become exceptionally clear. That's why a lot of times yogi, when they come into the retreat, somehow or another they can solve their problems. Somehow or another they can solve their whatever problems is hanging in the office or hanging in the work or hanging here and there. Somehow or another, ding. How come I couldn't able to think about those uh, answers and the path of how to deal with this thing? But while we are sitting here, everything just looks so simple. That is where it catch you in. All these things, it makes you become clear. It's again here is because of mindfulness. Mindfulness, it It takes away a lot of all other distraction, and you only solve that problem or whatever you want, and you see your things clearer, or kind of like it sees the problem from a different perspective. Although these are all concepts, but somehow or another yogis go through those things. So these are very enticing. The mind is trying to catch you and make you drown into all these things without you realizing it. So you feel that you are really good in solving these things. You have answers. You have the solution for all these things, for whatever problems that you have. Some people even, the yogis even, they put the book beside them. Quickly they open up before they forget the solution. They're going to write it down. Write down. Close back a book. Yeah, or they get caught into all these things, all this concept and so forth. So you've got to be careful. It's very enticing, our thoughts and our ideas. So if you don't see those things as flaws, as burden to you, it's very difficult for you to shift into the meditation object, the proper meditation objects. So now, when you begin to able to discern these conceptual objects, that you put it aside, now the mind has to keep noting on the actual vipassana objects. And the actual vipassana objects here, as I said earlier on, it falls under four foundation of mindfulness, the objects of four foundation of mindfulness. We have to take these objects not because of inherently, internally, there will be truth. The truth is there. The truth is, you see, all the Four Noble Truths, whatever Dhamma that you understand, it will fall under these objects of four foundation of mindfulness. Whatever that you learn about the Dhamma, finally it falls within this mind and bodily process. Everything you want to know is within this mind and bodily process. So the four foundation of mindfulness, if you summarize them, the objects, it only divide into two: bodily objects, mental objects. Feelings, painful feelings, and here these are all belongs to the mind, although it's connected to the body. When you notice your thinking and so on, they also belongs to the mind. When you notice like intention and actions taking place, although right now is crossover from mind to body, when you begin to notice this conditioning, then this one falls under Dhamma, the fourth foundation of mindfulness. How you see how they connected to each other. Now, to begin with this concept, to begin with this noticing of objects on the actual Vipassana objects, our recommendation and our experience that when you begin with this Vipassana meditation, it's always good to begin with something that is clear, prominent to you. If you're going to take up objects that is obscure, not so clear, especially objects like mind objects, objects like senses also, these are very obscure objects, not easy for a beginner to do. If you want to notice, you think that Vipassana you must have to go to notice your defilements, like your greed, your hatred, your delusion. These are also obscure objects. You are not ready to face the all these defilements, not yet, not in the meantime, not in the beginning of it. What are you going to face? You know, sometimes there are some yogis, after they read the suttas, without proper guidance, they think that, oh, all our problem is because of this greed, hatred, delusion. So what they do is that they want to bulldoze on that greed, hatred, delusion, you know. You know that you go into the, over here you have that. No, not over here. Over here you have rodeo. the one that they put the red cloth and then, you know, the bull is going to knock it down. That thing that like a Spanish matador, something like that. And you know, some yogis, I look at them is something like that. They have, you know, you look at the defilement is like the red cloth, and then you are like the bull with the, and then you want to bang it through, that you want to knock down all your defilements. What are you going to knock down with? You don't have anything. Nothing is developed. You don't have concentration. Don't have mindfulness. You don't have compassion. You don't have anything much, and yet you want to kill your own. You want to kill all this greed, hatred, delusion. It's like the greed, hatred, delusion. If they got a face and the eyes and the mouth, they'll just laugh at you. You cannot do that. You have to build up. So you have to build up that mindfulness. You have to build up that clarity of the mind. Then, with that state of mind that is strong, you direct it to the objects of vipassana objects. So the mental state has to be strong. The object also has to be right, and they have to come together in order to make them into vipassana meditation or satipatthana meditation. If the object is there, if your mind is not strong, then it won't work. If your mind is strong, you take up the wrong object, also it won't work. So you have to have that strong state of mind and you have to have that object. So now you take up this object. The reason that we take up this specifically, this object, because as I said, truth is inside it. And the other words of this truth, what you will see is about impermanence, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. You will show all these objects, mental or physical object, inherently in them. They have these characteristics. Right now, if your mind is not trained, in other words, if the mind is still have that ignorance, you will not see the truth. You will not see its true character, their true characteristic of this mind and body. Until we begin to slowly push ourselves with this mindfulness and discerning and wisdom, and you begin to notice their characteristic as you keep on noticing them again and again. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. Here, if you flip it in another way, we call it the insights. Insights. Yeah? You know why we use the word vipassana? The word vipassana is a Pali word, comes in two words, vi and passana. The vi means various. Passana means seeing. In other words, seeing something that is various. What is various over here? What is many over here? Here, the many it means the object has many different characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta. You pay attention to all these impermanence, dukkha, anatta. And it will show you not just one impermanence, they will show you many layers of impermanence. They'll show you many layers of the dukkha also. You think that you sit there and buttock pain, here pain, there pain. Oh, I see a lot of dukkha. Yes, you are seeing some dukkha, but you haven't seen the deeper aspect of dukkha yet, the deeper aspect of unsatisfactoriness yet. Yeah. Then again here, the deeper again, the non-self, the various aspect, the various level of non-self, they are also there. Yeah. So your job as a Vipassana meditator is to bring the mind to touch on these objects, to pay attention to these objects again and again. As the mindfulness gets stronger, they will begin to reveal themselves to you. In other words, the ignorance getting less and less, and the wisdom getting more and more as you begin to see the true nature of these objects. Although theoretically, as I said, these objects are important for the development of Vipassana, theoretically, but practically, you must know which one to take up first. As I said earlier on, the mental aspect of it, in the beginning of our practice, don't take up on that too much. Take up on the bodily objects and also like painful objects, which is obvious object to you or to all of us. It's easier to develop the mindfulness. So that's why right in the beginning itself, we already ask you, we already request you, we already give the instruction that you do the walking, lifting, pushing, dropping, rising, falling, sitting, touching, what else? Pain, pulling, and so on. You notice these things as best as you can, because these, in a way, they are all connected with the body. Don't stay with the mind too much. In the beginning part of it, of the retreat, like first 2 or 3 days, these type of thoughts, when a lot of thinking arises, the best way is just to put them aside. Put them aside as best as possible. Bring the mind back to the walking, sitting. But after a number of days, as the mindfulness starts to grow and gets to more continuous, then you got to slowly take notice of the mind also. And all the thinking, the concept and everything. You begin to notice them. Then you'll see there are more and more objects for you to notice if you're careful. So we take up these objects. Here. Let's talk about the general aspect first. Then the next 2 or 3 days we go into the deeper aspect of this characteristic. Now while we are here, as we are doing this process of walking, sitting, and noticing the objects, basically our objects can be divided into 2 parts. One is called the primary objects, and the second one is the secondary objects. Okay? Now, the primary objects for walking meditation, now this is the movement of the feet area. Yeah? The lowest part of the feet, ankle below, this is where you notice whether it's the one phase, two phase, three phase, or more. So this is the area which is the primary object for the walking. For the sitting meditation, then we take this abdominal part of it to be the primary objects. Other than that, we take this as a primary objects. Now, secondary objects in the walking meditation, anything that above the knee until the hip. There may be sensation like, your thighs also is moving, isn't it? When you're walking, your knees also is moving, your hips are moving, your shoulder is moving, or sometimes when you're walking, the heat arises, the cold arises, or some pulling sensation arises. They happen. So what you should do is that when you're walking, you try to keep to the primary objects as best as you can. But sometimes, if you keep on walking and then the mind is not registering it much, for example, maybe you get bored. Right step, left step the same, next step the same, lifting, pushing, dropping, same. You get fed up with it. So what do? That this time is that you change to the secondary objects. Here, the secondary objects here, you take notice of them carefully. For example, let's say you take on the thighs or the knees are moving. So keep walking, but this time your attention to the knees area. So how does the knee move? It moves. Right leg is moved in that way, left leg is moved. Not the same as right. You cannot explain it too much, but you just feel it that they are different. So if they are different, you take note of them, they are different. But if you start thinking about maybe because of my tear in my knees, that's why I walk differently. And don't overthink too much. You're going into concept. You're going into too much thinking. If it's different, what you should do? You should learn to accept them. Just see them as they are. So sometimes right leg moving different from the left leg. It's okay. Don't start thinking maybe my one leg is longer than the other leg. You're overthinking concept. So we learn to stay. So if there's secondary objects, you take note of the secondary objects too. Now, if you're able to clear the bottom, then well and good. Then fine. If after that, if the sensation of the lifting, pushing, dropping, or right step, left step begins to come in, begins to clear again, then what do? You go back to the primary objects. Other words, whether there's drowsiness come in or boredom comes in, you can always shift objects so that to keep the mind, the alertness alive. So take note of the secondary objects also. It's not wrong. Sometimes even if you're clear at once in a while in the right step, left step, or lifting, pushing, dropping, then sometimes there are the hips tends it may be clearer than the movement of the feet area. So if it's clearer, it's dominant, what you should do? You put the attention there. At least take notice of the hip, how it's moved, in what way it moves. So your job is like however the body is moving, as if like the observation is looking it from the outside, something like that. Then to notice what is happening there. Then that time you don't judge it. You don't analyze it. You just see them as it is. So this is on the primary or secondary objects. Now, secondary object also on the walking. You see, the bottom is also a secondary object. If you so happen you don't want to note the upper aspect of the body, then what you can do alternatively is to stand there and note bottom, 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 bottom. And then you learn to feel how the bottom is like, how it eats into, how it depletes the energy, and how it makes sometimes the mind runs here and there. That its character, the nature of the bottom. If you're able to watch until the bottom kind of disappear, gone, then after that make an intention to walk, intention to walk, intention to walk, then lifting, pushing, dropping, or right step, left step. So other words, there is a continuity of mindfulness even from the walking to the bottom, bottom back to the walking again. Or the first one is that from the walking primary objects, you notice the secondary objects on the other parts of the body, then after that you go back to the primary objects. Continuity of mindfulness. In the sitting, now the sitting are also many secondary objects. Here, pain is also secondary objects. The itchiness, secondary object, heat, cold, all secondary objects. One of the things why we put them as secondary object is because they don't occur all the time. Your breathing occur all the time. If it doesn't occur, then something is wrong with you. You're dead. Now, most of the time, although it occur, but you can't notice them. You can't feel it because why? Well, the mindfulness is not so clear. Now, if you're able to feel the rising and falling, you feel it as best as you can, as much as you can. Now, once in a while, if other objects become obvious, pulling sensation is there or some itchiness there, don't be afraid of letting go of the rising and falling and take notice of it. The Vipassana does not depend on one object. The Vipassana depends on continuity of the mindfulness. Is you take note of the sensation of the pain or pulling or whatever is going on, you pay attention to it. Now, if that itchiness starts to diminish or not that clear, back again to the rising and falling. If you notice the rising and falling, then after that the thinking arises, then you notice them carefully. Thinking, planning, and see how it disappears. See until it disappears, gone, back again to the rising and falling. Sometimes you're not sure what to notice. If your mind is doubtful of any of the object, always go back to the rising and falling, to the primary object. When you go back to the bodily object, then it is safe. Safe because the body doesn't think. Sometimes yogis, they goes into the mind. The mind is between thinking and clear and thinking and non-thinking, and it's very vague inside there. Unless your mind is very sharp. So it's not a good way to stay with the thinking. If you're not sure, back again to the rising and falling. You're not sure, back again to the lifting, pushing, dropping. Just put everything aside, then back again to the primary object. Then you are in the correct path. So there's primary and secondary objects. So although we use the word primary or secondary, make sure that when they becomes clear, you have to pay attention to those objects as best as you can. Not primary, you pay attention to it a lot. Then secondary, you just kind of like You're waiting for it to go. You shake your leg, and then when are you going to go? Oh yes, it's come back again. All right, let's go. No, you have to pay attention to that don't wait for the primary, but keep noticing whatever object that arises. Yeah. All right, so we continue on this tomorrow night. Yeah, you'll see into this characteristic deeper. Okay.